What are some qualities that cannot be learned from books but are very important? Personal qualities that cannot be found in books and are rarely discussed. I believe there are the following 3. 1. Ability to manage expectations in interpersonal communication. 2. Threshold self-control awareness. 3. Ability to deal with subjective time-space distortion. Let's start with the first one, the ability to manage expectations. In movies and TV shows, there is often such a feeling, a ruffian or bandit who does evil deeds on ordinary days. In the last episode, he suddenly becomes righteous and even becomes a hero. At this time, the audience's favorability towards him will suddenly skyrocket, even surpassing many positive characters without any breakthroughs in previous episodes. This is the benefit of expectations being lowered by the screenwriter in advance. Remember a formula. Happiness equals reality, expectations. When we first enter a team, if we show all our skills at once, it will cause people around us and leaders to continuously raise their expectations of us. Eventually, there will be a time when you can't meet their requirements, and negative evaluations of you will also arise accordingly, even lower than those colleagues who have always performed average. Some people summarize it as an incompetence trap, because in an upward trajectory, as long as you meet the upper-level expectations, you will continue to be promoted until you reach a position that you cannot handle competently and disappoint everyone. Only then will this promotion process end. This also applies in romantic relationships. You will find that when prodigal sons turn over a new leaf, they receive considerable praise. Many women may not care about how bad they were before. But for honest, good men, once caught being dishonest just once, they immediately fall into the category of scumbags and can never redeem themselves. This requires us to effectively manage other people's expectations of us. A common method is to hold back your best moves, not revealing anything beyond the other person's expectations until a critical moment. However, people around you are not fools. If this happens too often, others will tend to believe that you have hidden talents. For example, those students who always claim, "I didn't do well on this test," but still get first place in class have long lost their credibility, yet others' expectations of them continue to rise. The pressure they face can be imagined. To truly control other people's expectations of you effectively, you need to truly leave no trace and suppress your desire for performance and vanity at all unnecessary times. I believe this is the first lesson when entering the workplace. Threshold self-control awareness. Threshold refers to the minimum stimulus intensity required to trigger a behavioral response. I wrote an article online about 6 or 7 years ago that many people may have read before. Here is an excerpt. Pornography has harmed countless normal young men. In the days without pornography films, boys were filled with evil thoughts in their minds. But in today's era of rampant online pornography, they suddenly lose interest in real women. This cannot help but become a classic case of human alienation in the information age. How did it come to this? It's because of thresholds. Continuous and sustained stimulation raises men's desire threshold and triggers higher and higher levels over time. At the beginning of the last century, just catching a glimpse of white thighs occasionally revealed by women wearing cheongsams was enough to trigger desires for old scholars, referring humorously to older men. However, 100 years later, watching organs going in and out on full screens makes many people say, boring. This is evidence of how times change and cause thresholds to continuously rise. Take an extreme example. Siddhartha Gautama was originally a prince from Kapilavastu kingdom who lived a life surrounded by luxury. His father built 3 palaces for him in spring, summer, and winter. But he lived a very disillusioned life. His father selected the most enchanting and beautiful women from India to please him. However, the marginal utility of beauty in wine had become so small that it could no longer bring him greater satisfaction. Only by leaving secular life and creating Buddhism did he find peace. He enjoyed great material satisfaction since birth, which led his threshold to rise to an unimaginable level for ordinary people. In the end, nothing material could make him happy anymore. Those who have been ordained as monks since childhood have never experienced worldly pleasures, so their thresholds are low. Just a little stimulation is enough to trigger them. Enlightened individuals often come from wealthy families. This is not surprising. When you deeply understand the impact of thresholds on personal happiness and joy, you will know that this concept is not only applicable to sex and love but can also be extended to all aspects of life happiness. Understanding the law of diminishing marginal utility and learning a certain degree of abstinence and self-control are the key methods to prevent threshold elevation. This is a quality and awareness that needs to be cultivated and exercised early in life, especially for men. Coping with temporal distortion. This concept is a bit mysterious. The temporal distortion mentioned here refers to the subjective feeling that time seems to accelerate with age, and it becomes unstoppable. I believe most people have this feeling that time passes faster as they grow older. When we were in elementary school, each month seemed long. In college, each semester passed by quickly. After starting work, it became 1 year after another. The older we get, the faster time flies. Ask your parents. They will tell you how 10 years pass in the blink of an eye while discussing events from decades ago as if they happened yesterday. I started researching ways to counteract this temporal distortion very early on. I found some interesting explanations online. When someone is 5 years old, their memory spans 5 years. When they turn 6 years old after 1 year has passed, their memory increases by 1/5 of a year. From 6 to 7 years old, their memory increases by 1/6 of a year. From 7 to 8 years old, their memory only increases by 1/7 of a year. And so on. By the time someone reaches 20 years old, when another year passes by them, their memory only increases by 1/20 of a year. Although this period remains unchanged, our reference point changes. That's why everyone feels like time goes faster now. This explanation makes sense. If you carefully recall your childhood memories, you'll find that a 10-minute break during school was enough time to run downstairs and play. But now, sitting in front of your office computer, you've only had a hot drink and prepared to work, yet an hour has already passed without accomplishing anything. The 2-month summer vacation seemed so long back then, but now 1 month is just 4 weeks and disappears in the blink of an eye. If we use the theory of memory increment to explain this phenomenon, it means that our work and life after adulthood are simply repetitive. Therefore, the total data in our brains does not experience rapid growth like it did during childhood. When our brain processes today's 24 hours, it only needs to access indexes stored from several years ago. Familiarity makes everything easy and there is almost no increase in overall information volume. Consequently, you subjectively perceive fewer, new things, while experiencing new things is precisely the key to slowing down subjective time. Using the concept of stepping out of one's comfort zone on Quora, if we want to solve the problem of temporal distortion, we must step out of our familiar zone, the comfort zone, which acts as a black hole in the space-time continuum, constantly accelerating consumption and devouring your time. If you leave your office and spend a month in an unfamiliar country, you will find that this month doesn't pass by as quickly as it does at work. Instead, it feels longer than 2 weeks spent at the office. This serves as an example for combating temporal distortion. It's not just about traveling. If you experiment more with yourself, you will discover many methods that suit you individually, but first comes awareness of breaking free from familiarity. This is one of the most important abilities I believe people need to master throughout their lives. Mastering the ability to counteract temporal distortion allows for prolonging subjective lifespan. In the final analysis, the ability that can never be learned from reading is the ability to put down books and take action. Reading is definitely a good thing, but it is also easy to create an illusion. After reading certain truths, one thinks they understand. After understanding human nature's tricks and deceptions, one thinks they have insight into worldly affairs and believes that things in the world are just like that, thinking they just haven't encountered them yet. This is very frightening. There is a question on Quora called, "Why do we know so many truths but still cannot live a good life?" The answer is actually very simple. Our lives are made up of countless choices. And when people make choices, they often act irrationally. This is humanity's greatest weakness. People are driven by emotions and therefore vulnerable. No matter how many books you read or how much knowledge you gain, it often doesn't help when facing practical difficulties. You know you should invest in yourself to seize opportunities in the future, but after a day of exhaustion, can you turn off TV shows and movies and force yourself to read a few pages of professional books? You know rational individuals pursue marginal benefits without considering sunk costs, but when faced with decisions about giving up something you've persisted for 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years on, can you let go of attachment? You know decision-making requires excluding emotional interference and weighing pros and cons objectively. However, when faced with choices that will shape your next 10 years' future outcomes directly, can you truly remain calm without hesitation or indecision? Have you ever experienced doing something against your will while physically exhausted and mentally drained? For example, entertaining clients, dealing with bills, or dealing with daily trivial matters. And all this effort was only to keep your small stable environment from falling apart. Have you ever felt deeply powerless in front of fate or society as a whole? Have you experienced the heart-chilling feeling of being betrayed by friends, the loneliness of waking up alone in the middle of the night, the darkness of not seeing a future despite working 12 hours a day, despair from carrying debts and being too busy to take a breath, regret from missing opportunities, or even doubt about your abilities and existential meaning? These are things that reading cannot give you. Books can tell you many truths, but what they can never provide is the true inner feelings when facing difficulties and a resolute mindset when making choices. Only after experiencing many things, feeling frustrated, disappointed, and crying painfully again and again, can you truly grasp them and possess them. You will find that there are many coldnesses and abysses in life that belong only to yourself, only you can face them. What they test is your heart, which has been tempered through countless trials without any change at all. No one can replace you in bearing these burdens, nor any book help resist them for you. The integration of knowledge with action is always difficult. It's always harder to act than just know what should be done. Reading books and gaining experiences are always complementary relationships. Unfortunately, the biggest misconception among many readers is thinking that reading books can replace real-life experiences. Books may give you strength, but cultivating a strong inner self requires raising your threshold for pain. In other words, you must go through pain repeatedly, perhaps risks, losses, further things that disgust or repel you, until you become able to endure pain without being controlled by 1,000 books either. However, this happens to be the greatest side effect of reading books. The essence of reading remains within our comfort zone. When we read books, we observe others' lives without ever participating in them ourselves. The joys and sorrows depicted in books belong solely to the protagonists, but the difficult decisions made in books are also made by the protagonists. You always remain an observer and never truly experience despair and powerlessness when facing difficulties. Therefore, many times reading or burying oneself in books is a way of avoiding fear and risk. In books, you are always safe and never get caught up in real-life storms. As a result, you lose opportunities to truly test yourself. Moreover, it can give you such an illusion. You have read many stories, and think that you understand many truths, but you do not understand. It's just your perception of understanding. When you encounter situations from books, even if you know the correct answer, do you have the courage to choose that path? I feel that people who read a lot tend to have this tendency. When encountering any situation, they take a step back and think carefully about it before deciding whether or not to move forward. And often the result is, forget it, let's not move forward after all. So go out and experience life around you well. Do things that you usually want to do but dare not do. Challenge your limits. Go challenge your limits. Go through various experiences. Don't be afraid of risks, nor afraid of losses. Books can teach you all kinds of techniques, but if you don't use them in real battles, you can never be considered a strong person in life.